Welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Over the last 20 years, I've been a sales rep, a marketer, a manager, an executive, a consultant, and an advisor. This show is designed to give you access to my list of contacts so that you can learn more about how to present your ideas at work and succeed in your career.
Startups and salespeople, marketers and managers from the Epicast Network in Pittsburgh. It's the Pitchwerks podcast.
Every vote that comes up, I have to sell my colleagues on my position and simultaneously sell the media on my position and simultaneously sell my constituents.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pitchwerks podcast. I'm Scott McTaggart. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, we have Pittsburgh Councilman Dan Gilman. He does what I believe to be one of the hardest sales jobs in America, local politics. It is very difficult. Before we get started, got to take care of some basic business. We're going to rate and review this program, all of us, every single one of us. Even if you don't like this program, you're going to get in there. You're going to give it a star value. Tell us it's 1 star, it's 5 star. Give us some feedback. You're doing this great. You're doing this less than great. And please, by all means, interact with us a little bit on social media. The handle is Pitchwerks, Pitchwerks. Whether you're talking about Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or LinkedIn, you're going to find us all those different places. And by all means, check out the home base at pitchwerks.com. There you can get our blog, Pitchcraft. You can sign up for Pitchwerks Premium, which, that's our weekly training and webinar series where you'll also get to hear all of the interviews we give every week in their entirety. Every week we do a long interview and then we have to cut it down, into a bite-sized 30-minute chunk. If you'd like to hear the whole thing, participate in some training and some webinars, that sort of thing, Pitchwerks Premium is for you. So without further ado, here comes Councilman Dan Gilman, City of Pittsburgh. All right, joined now by Councilman Dan Gilman. Dan, I can't tell you how much I appreciate having you here.
No, it's my pleasure. Love the podcast and excited to get to finally be on.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. The idea of politics as a pitch where you have to convince people of an idea that you've got. You are a very young councilman.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I don't feel like it, so I'll take it.
It is a long day, I'm sure of that. But are you 33 now?
34.
34. Yeah. Happy birthday.
Thanks.
I think the last time I saw you was
That's probably true, yeah.
So how does such a young man get into such an important position?
The answer is a series of right opportunity, right time, which I think is the answer in most careers that you could choose, mixed with, of course, hard work and having the ability to take advantage of the opportunity. But without boring the listeners with my entire life history, I grew up in a house where my parents weren't political, but they were certainly engaged. They were never going to not vote. The news was on. We talked current events, but there weren't yard signs. They weren't writing checks to politicians. Never. None of those things. No yard signs, no Democratic committee members. So on the one hand, it wasn't an obvious. On the other hand, I'm the youngest of 4, and at some time, all 4 of us were heavily engaged in student council, student government. So there was something our parents instilled in us in terms of service, without a doubt. And I went to Carnegie Mellon, became student body vice president, then student body president, had some cool internships through that. And one of them was I got to know the city councilman who represented Carnegie Mellon early on in his first term, which was a guy named Bill Peduto, who, of course, is now mayor of Pittsburgh. Got really lucky that when I graduated, he all of a sudden had a job opening in his office and hired me. 10 years later, I had been working in City Hall and been his chief of staff. He becomes mayor, and I'm able to run and successfully win. So there's a lot of just kind of great opportunities, but of course with a skill set and a passion to take advantage of the opportunity when it arrives.
So is there a Mrs. Gilman?
There is, yes. I've been married to Amanda for about a year and a half. And we have new baby Gilman added to the mix in that time.
There's a teeny tiny one.
There's a teeny tiny one.
How old?
7 months.
Oh, that's a lot of work on its own.
Yeah.
You doing all right? You sleeping?
Doing great. We've been so lucky. He's just an amazing kid. And my wife is a saint. So I'm not going to complain for a second. She does all the hard work. I mean, I know it becomes a cliche, you watch the Emmys and everyone thinks, but it's true. I don't care what the profession is, and I don't care male, female. You can't succeed in what you're doing on your own. It takes, whether you have kids at home and someone staying home to do that very difficult task, or it's, in my case, someone who's willing to also, be at my side at endless events and pretend that listening to, city council debates is interesting and everything else, and listen to me complain when I get home. It takes partnerships to succeed. So it is cliche, but
a lot of times I speak in terms of what do you want to spend your fuel on? Because I think as an analogy that's useful. You say like, well, what do you want to spend your fuel on? Do you want to spend your fuel on arguing with a spouse? No.
Absolutely.
No, because losing's no fun. No, you don't want to spend, in my view, your fuel on that because it takes such a toll. There's so much work involved in not having your home life right and causing that stress for everyone. And I do think it's probably something that does hold people back. I don't take it as a cliche at all. I honestly think that there is probably a lot to be said for a healthy relationship yielding, great results at work. I don't think you can have one, without the other. Tell me more about the district that you're working with in particular.
So I represent a fascinating district. I have, probably close to $500 million of construction either underway or already done in my district in my 3 years in office. I represent the colleges and universities that have been the driving force of the new economy. I represent an unbelievably diverse district. The amazing thing, I have the head of the Greek Orthodox Church, the head of the Catholic Diocese, the home of National Reform Judaism, the Islamic Center, the head of the Pittsburgh Mormon Church, the main Quaker Friends Meeting House. It's just amazing what is all going on in the East End, plus the museums and the largest Jewish community. It's fascinating to represent that area.
The higher the stakes, I have a feeling like traditionally the older, grayer person gets selected. How does your identity jive with your constituents? It's a big, demanding job.
I think I had metaphorical gray. Well, now I have literal gray hairs, but at the time I maybe had metaphorical gray hairs in that when I was elected, I had worked in city council for 10 years in this district as the chief of staff. When I moved to Pittsburgh, my parents, we lived in the district. My parents still live in the district. I went to college in the district. The district was my home. I was well known. I could go through my district when I ran, and no exaggeration, on every single block of the entire district, I could tell you a person I had helped and what the constituent issue was. I don't care if it was a stop sign put up or a watch for children sign, whatever it was, every single block. So the gray hair, which is really saying the experience, the work, the someone who, would hit the ground running, the person who would have the respect at the table to be a voice, I think I had earned in the 10 years. Granted, at the time I was, 31 instead of 51, but still I had done that work that I think you're talking about. That is a legitimate point. I mean, my district, certainly, and many districts, but I'll talk to mine, wouldn't want someone with a long learning curve. There's a lot of things going on. It's happening quickly. The district's changing quickly.
Ton of tech.
A lot of tech, a lot of construction. I mean, massive amounts of construction. My district, I say, and I can't back it up, but I think most people would agree, it is the economic center right now between Philadelphia and Chicago. That's what I represent. No one wants to sit around while, a 30-year-old who's never done it before starts to figure out how does development work? How do I talk to people? There was too much to do. So I think I had earned the gray hairs. People can see, feel, touch local government. I always joke, your inversely proportional level of government and expectations. You have no expectation of ever meeting President Obama. You don't really have an expectation of him ever doing anything for you. You, of course, hope his policies help you, but you don't think you're writing to the White House to say, do this with North Korea and that he's going to listen. That's not your expectation. You fully expect to see your city councilman not once, but regularly at everything, that they email you back immediately, they tweet you back immediately, they answer the phone when you call. If I miss one block watch, that's a bad thing. I'm supposed to be there. I'm expected. And so because people have that expectation, they want a go-getter for sure, number one. They want someone who knows what they're doing in the position, and government has to work. We can't have government shutdowns locally. I got to pick up your garbage. Police have to come when you call 911. The baseball field's got to be ready for your little league game, whatever it is.
When you pull out of your driveway,
right?
Yeah.
It's not like the federal government where sadly you barely notice if the government shuts down or not.
You said it. You will never shake hands with President Obama. You will never bump into him Your councilman, on the other hand, is kind of always on, right? The president has an entire sort of identity detail. They manage how he looks, how he sounds, where he stands, which direction is he angled toward the light. You've got to go convince people, and they never give you a day off. You don't have this crew going around, making sure that Dan Gilman always looks good. It's like, okay, well, hang on. Here come the 5 ties you're going to wear today to your 5 different events.
I had the opportunity to talk with Senator Tim Kaine, vice presidential nominee Kaine, recently.
Yes.
We had 3-5 minutes privately, and we were talking. And Tim Kaine has been a city councilman, then a mayor, then a governor, now a senator, and possibly a vice president. And he said to me, and then he went on stage and talked about it, city council was the hardest job he ever had.
I believe that.
And it's true. They know you at the grocery store. Not everybody in Virginia today would, well, maybe now that he's the vice president nominee, but 6 months ago, he could go into a grocery store and some people would recognize him. I guarantee you everyone did not say, oh, that's our senator. They knew their city council person, though, and they had a list of 7 things in their pocket ready to go.
There's no blacked out SUV for the city councilman. Like, oh, you're not allowed to look in that car.
I parked my own car, paid the meter.
Take it from me. Councilman Gilman showed up on his own. No entourage, no blacked out SUV, no team of people with little earpieces, just a guy.
And it is very, I will say, in a good way. Don't take it as a complaint, because I love this job. And it's actually what I love about my job most is that 24/7 that you're talking about. But yeah, no, my wife and I don't go out to dinner without my ending up with a work to-do list.
Yeah.
That's part of the life. But I also love it because I can actually accomplish that. That's what I love about local government is, even if you saw Senator Kaine at a grocery store in Virginia and you said, you know what, Senator, the problem is, every time my kid goes to Little League, the lights aren't on and we miss out on practice and all this. If you see your councilman, the lights are going to be on Monday. Like, they can do that for you. And I love that piece of it because everyone thinks government doesn't work right now. That's the constant. And to some extent, they're right. Government isn't working. So to be able to actually achieve something, and every time I drive down the street, say, look up, I did that. That worked. That worked. Oh, good to see that the fence is back up or whatever it is. It makes you feel like you're accomplishing something. So while it is harder, and I do think city council is the hardest job in government, it is also by far the most rewarding.
I completely agree with you. A significant portion of our listener base is in the sales and startup community where they have to convince people of things. But they get an hour and then they go home. They go back to their office, right? And they go, oh, that was a really tough pitch. And they don't go to the grocery store, checking out this head of lettuce versus that head of lettuce and have somebody go, you really duffed that pitch, So do you feel any kinship with that? Do you ever feel like you're kind of on stage selling?
Absolutely. That's all I do. That's what my job is every day, whether it was getting elected, which is the ultimate sales pitch basically of yourself. But whether, again, going back to the small thing like street paving, I have to sell why I think certain streets should be paved versus others, or why more money should go into the paving budget than the hillside remediation budget. Every vote that comes up, I have to sell my colleagues on my position and simultaneously sell the media on my position and simultaneously sell my constituents on the media. Hopefully those 3 are the same argument, usually, not necessarily always, or at least not the same usage of the argument. But everything is a sales pitch. And much like people in, most actually people in sales or in the tech company may get a longer opportunity to do so. I'm often limited to a tweet or a 1-sentence clip on the radio to tell all of my constituents why I voted for X. I don't get 3 minutes in the elevator or half an hour in a meeting. I get a sentence to try to convey it and hope I can do it well.
I think probably at the beginning of the show, everyone was probably wondering, like, why are we talking to a local councilman from Pittsburgh? I don't live in Pittsburgh, right?
Hopefully they're not wondering that at the end of the show. That's
I
the
think
goal.
Right
if
now,
I sell myself well, they won't wonder.
Great job. I think we just kind of let the cat out of the bag, though, because you just said, I have all of these people who are voting citizens who need to think I'm doing right by them. On top of that, I can't get anything done unless other people who represent other citizens agree. And then on top of that, the media has the ability to sort of paint it however they choose to paint it. And sometimes I'm sure it has to do with how they will benefit or not benefit from what's being discussed. And all of those pitches, and this is what's different about what you do versus what I've done throughout my career and what a lot of our listeners have been doing. you have to do it all in front of the other parties. When you're pitching the media, you're doing it with the same tweet that you're pitching the constituents and the other councilmen. And if one of them decides that they're against you, everyone in the other groups, everyone in their same group knows that, there's dissent afoot.
Well, let me take it a step further of why this is the hardest sales job of all time. If you're selling widgets, you're selling them to someone who wants to buy widgets, generally speaking. Maybe not yours, but they want to buy them. If you're selling your tech company, you're going to a venture capitalist who wants to invest in tech companies. I'm not going to Roger Dangerfield, I promise. But
I'm laughing because I didn't think of it that way. As far as, you mentioned earlier, like there's some people who just don't think government works, but one way or the other, they're still buying.
Yeah, and at the same time, I'm trying to sell a 22-year-old Democrat who grew up in poverty with no formal education, who's struggling to find a job, and a 76-year-old Republican who's made millions with 3 degrees from an Ivy League institution. I've got the entire spectrum of the world in the same pitch. They weren't interested necessarily in it. It was, can sometimes be forced on them. And I've got to hopefully sell both. And good elected officials can.
Now that we've established that you're very, very well practiced in the art of the pitch, I'm curious to see whether or not you might have one that you might want to drop on us.
Wow, that's a lot of on-the-spot pressure.
On-the-spot pressure is what we do.
What am I pitching?
Here. I don't know. Whatever you like. I have a feeling that you probably have something that you want to get done, something that you were hoping that people would pass, or, that, you want your constituents to get behind. Remember, most of our folks aren't necessarily from the local area. So if it goes terrible, most of them won't mind.
Let me share with one I've been doing a lot of lately, which is selling Pittsburgh to outsiders, which is exactly that. In particular, outsiders in the tech world, whether it's people I want to locate business here or introduce venture capital into the region. And I believe very clearly that Pittsburgh is the number one market anyone looking to invest in that industry should be looking at. Average age 32.8. Second fastest growing population of millennials with a college degree in the entire United States. Second most universities per capita or university students outside of Boston in the entire United States. Most affordable living to buy a home of any major American city. It just came out. You have to make, I think it's $32,890 a year to buy the average home, which is about $128,000 in the city of Pittsburgh. Nowhere in the United States, if you are in the tech industry, whether you're looking to invest or you're looking to move your company, do you have the talent pool at the cost of living with the high quality of life of our parks, of our safe city, of our streets and neighborhoods, of our historic architecture, of our world-class culture, of professional sports teams, of whatever it is you want in a city that is that affordable with that kind of talent and is that much on the rise. You can't do it in Boston. You can't do it in San Francisco. You can't do it in Austin. Every single company interested in expansion should be looking at Pittsburgh at the top of their market.
Oh, you put me on the spot, he said. One thing I noticed that you didn't bring up was how much square footage was available. You didn't necessarily talk logistics. You talked quality of life, right? You didn't say like, okay, well, there's tons of it here, and I like the fact that you sort of broke off and you said, I'm going to own this part of this pitch, which is, this is where you'd want to come because of the people are going to be the thing that make your company. Are you targeting more startup type companies or established companies?
Both.
Okay.
We are currently talking to some of the largest companies in the world, down to a company of 2 that just moved here. So I've got the entire spectrum, and it's the exact same pitch.
Yeah.
It is the exact same pitch because people are your capital, and a good business person recognizes that. Happy employees matter, which is obvious when you look at successful companies today and their work policies, their work environments. As an aside, people always say government should operate more like a business. I was like, well, I'm waiting for my Google Sleep Pod at the office any day now. It's a changing work environment. And so, yeah, I did focus on the 10,000 kind of foot view because you're never going to touch on every aspect. That's the follow-up. Of course, we're going to get into square footage available, rent prices, which neighborhood, is it on the bus line? All of those questions are going to come up, but that's not going to sell them because that almost every city in America can. Anyone can say, I have great space in a prime location in our best neighborhood available today. Maybe not for the same square foot price, but still, those aren't going to separate you out.
I actually loved
in
it.
the same way.
I really do. I love it because that's your headline. Your headline is, yeah, those other places have square footage, but we have the right climate to grow your workforce. What type of negative feedback do you get when you present this? Is it the climate? Is it something else? A rebuttal of one of your points?
Never a rebuttal of the point. I've never had any of my points rebutted. What I do get, and of course you're avoiding some of those in the pitch, airport.
Right.
I definitely hear that. Hear about schools sometimes, though again, I think our school system is, while there is room for improvement, much stronger than many other major urban American cores. But I hear that. I hear access to capital, the amount of venture capital in the region.
I hear that one a lot in the circles I run in.
Yeah, and in particular, many people with capital want you to be close. They don't want to get on a plane and travel to come see you. So if they want me close, I'm going to be close. Those are the big pushes we hear. But I actually have to say, we don't get rejected on the pitch very often. There's not pushback. If we're going to lose, it's going to be because someone didn't investigate, or ultimately, sadly, it's, the power of the dollar. And in today's climate, especially with a big company, some other state's going to come in and drop a massive tax incentive on them that we can't match. That can happen. We have heard nobody come to visit and leaves with a complaint about anything in our pitch.
Well, and that's the key. That's all you can do. You can't control everything. But your pitch carries the marks of something that has been practiced and delivered hundreds and thousands of times, right? And that's how you know you're doing it right, is that you've gotten it in front of so many people and you shaved the burrs off as you went. Every time you go through, you say, oh, they want to know about housing. Or I was standing next to the person from Skokie, Illinois, and they have great housing prices, but maybe they don't have the proximity of the housing, and it's actually in my district. Every time you pitch, you pick up just a little bit more. I truly believe every repetition gives you just a little bit more flavor and a little sense of like how to deliver it, when to deliver it, which parts to drop out, which parts to add in. And I hear all those tones in what you gave. I couldn't find anything that I could necessarily pick off and say, oh, that's not how I would say that, or boy, I would object if I were coming from, say, New York or whatever. Honestly, the only objection that I have to anything that you've said so far is that I don't want these people to know about Pittsburgh because I'd like it to be very, very quick getting to work in the morning. But I realize that is counter to your mission.
It'll be quicker for you to get at work when you buy a house in my district. It's going to be much easier for you.
Oh, I knew it was coming. I just didn't know when. How do you keep all of the various people, constituents, media, councilmen, how do you keep all of those relationships clear? Like where you are, what was the last conversation you had? Do you use like a note-taking system, a CRM system? Is it tech? Is it paper? How do you do that?
Generally, we do use a CRM system in our office. In terms of all the constituent complaints, we absolutely have a CRM system that we use. Personally, and this is funny since I'm the big tech guy, I have basically three things that keep my life going. The notes section on my iPhone, that's the very active to-do list all day. Second, I actually have a piece of, folded up 8.5 by 11 notebook paper, handwritten in my jacket pocket almost all the time that are adding things to it. And then third is a pile on my desk of the most active, important issues I'm working on, printed out emails, which is such a sad statement today. Right. But I know some people leave their email marked as unread. Some people, use the taskbar. None of that. I need a physical stack of paper, and there's still the most gratifying feeling in the world is when you finish a to-do list and throw it away or make a consolidate to-do list into one to-do list. That is the go-to for me. I have to have that physical paper still with me.
When you're giving presentations, like you go out into the world and I don't know, there's an outreach day, something like that, where you've got a booth where, there's a lot of those. Just you in the booth, or are we doing PowerPoint, or how are we doing that?
I never do a PowerPoint. I don't know if I've ever used PowerPoint since college.
Sleepwear, yeah.
Or any of the above. I don't use it. I do have an amazing staff. It's never just me. Thankfully, I have an amazing staff to do these things. I almost never, I've written one speech ever since I took office in full that I actually read a speech, and that was my inauguration address.
Yes.
And two, where I would call it detailed notes of an outline that I followed. One was a high school graduation address, and the other was speaking actually just this past week as I was speaking before John Fetterman and Bernie Sanders and Katie McGinty at a rally, and it was probably the biggest crowd I've ever spoken to. So I at least wanted a few notes to not mess that up. Usually no notes or 3 or 4 bullet point keywords that I can look down at, and trusting myself that I'm going to make the pitch from the heart, I feel works much better. I get more nervous if I'm trying to read. I think you come across as much less authentic when you're trying to read. And when you can just speak from the heart, yeah, I'm going to leave something out and get home and say, man, that was a key one I wanted to get in there. Much less of a problem than sounding like you're reading a pitch to somebody.
What words of advice do you have for someone who's trying to get government on their side, particularly local government? I don't think they necessarily always know what to ask for.
I was at a community meeting about crime in a neighborhood. There had been a bunch of house break-ins. And one of the residents of the neighborhood was a retired senior police officer. He was there as a upset resident, not as a police officer. Someone stood up, as happens at all these meetings, regular thing you hear, I never see any police in our neighborhood. This guy stood up and said, look, I'm one of your neighbors. I'm here because I'm concerned too, but don't forget, police cars don't drive between your couch and the television set. And it was one of the greatest lines I had ever heard. And he wasn't trying to be offensive, but there is a lot happening around you all the time. I happen to, because I know the people and it's my job, I notice every police car that drives by, sometimes even ones that don't have bars and, lights on them. You've got to get out there, whether that means coming down to City Hall, going to all the events that a city like Pittsburgh puts on for small business owners all the time, going to those networking happy hours. I want an entrepreneur to succeed for an endless list of reasons, from the promotion of Pittsburgh to the tax benefit, to the happiness of my residents, to, the services they will provide other people. I want that success to be there. So your ask has to be in that shared beneficial area. Don't go and ask government to hone your pitch. That's not their skill set. That's not what they're going to do. Go and ask government, do you have, a building I can buy so I can set up in a neighborhood where you want me and I want cheap space? That's a good government ask. Hey, can you help me get through this red tape of permitting, of taxation, of different levels of government? The less time I spend on that, the more time I can spend on the goal at hand. Can you take that on for me? These are all good asks, but you have to figure out what is that mutually beneficial area. There's the government Venn diagram, there's your life's Venn diagram. There is always an overlap. It's not the same for every person, but you got to figure out what that overlap area is.
I think we've covered more pitchcraft with the Pittsburgh City Councilman than we have in any show before this point. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That is some kind of, now granted, you're only the 5th show. So, there's still plenty of chance for me to, blow that record out. But this is an important record right now.
And I will add that success to my pitch.
I like it. I like it very much. Councilman Dan Gilman, City of Pittsburgh, we're very lucky to have him here on the Pitchwerks podcast. Thank you so much for coming out. And if you do live in Pittsburgh, make sure you vote this guy back in. I'm a big fan personally. Councilman Gilman really knows how to pitch. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. I knew what I wanted in inviting him on, because there's nothing more live without a net than that local government thing where people just always know where you live and where you shop and what time of day they're going to see you jogging, that sort of thing. You can't really get away from your customers and your critics when you're in local government. I'm going to tell you, though, I'm really, really impressed with the pitch that he gave for Pittsburgh as a destination for tech companies. It was really good. His facts were tremendous. I think they were really relevant. I think he appropriately zoomed in on just quality of life and availability of workforce in such a way that before they even knew the rest of the details, someone who owns a tech company would look at that and say, yeah, Pittsburgh makes all the sense in the world. It's just bad business to go somewhere else. And apparently everything is at pittsburghpa.gov. His contact information is on there. You can find him if you're interested. But when I heard his pitch, it really was hard to find any flaws in it. It was seamless, and you can tell he's done it a lot of times. So anyway, let's wrap up.
The Pitchwerks podcast comes to you from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a production of the Epicast Network and McTaggart, LLC. Engineering and production by Buzzy Torek and Nick Miller. For more information, show feedback, and ad sales, visit pitchwerks.com. pitchwerks.com. On social media, find and follow the show on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram using that same brand name, pitchwerks.